up soda pop Rickies to our heart's delight. Dancing to the swing-a-roo quickies, jukebox Saturday night.
The United States was never utopia, but before the Second World War, Americans tended to live within rather definite moral and legal limits. Most lived in the smaller cities and towns, and what the neighbors thought was important to them. The war changed that. Americans in large numbers left their hometowns for military service or work in the war plants. They found themselves free to question and even ignore traditional standards of behavior. The result was a massive shifting of moral and ethical values and a substantial change in the American way of life. When Americans talk nostalgically about the way the United States used to be, this is about what they have in mind. A place like Springfield, New Jersey, where the government made this film for soldiers overseas. It shows how some Americans lived then and how others hope to live someday. Springfield looked like 1,000 other small towns in America. It's a little hard to believe that it was only 45 minutes from Broadway.
A service flag in the window has become a pretty common sight in towns like Springfield, New Jersey. Each star stands for a man in the family, a son, a brother or husband who is in the service. And the star also stands for a mother, sweetheart, sister or wife who remains behind and whose thoughts are always with the men in her family who are away.
Dear John, it was so nice to receive your letter and to know you are well. You asked about Springfield. On the surface, the town doesn't seem to have changed a great deal. Main Street with the First National Bank and the majestic movie and Doc's drugstore looks about the same. Sometimes Doc runs out of Cokes now, but the high school kids still crowd the counter in the afternoon. And every time I go downtown shopping, I realize how many familiar faces are missing. But the children are still here. Even from our house, you can tell when it's 3 o'clock, when you hear them coming out of school. I could set the clock by the noise they make. The big event of the day on our street is the arrival of the mail. If the mail is 20 minutes late, we begin to worry. Mr. Cassidy, the mailman, knows the kind of letter we're waiting for, and it seems to count nearly as much to him as it does to us. You hear a lot about how much mail means to soldiers. Well, it means a lot to us here back home. The days when we receive letters from overseas are the happiest days we have. Down in the square, the Lions Club has put up an honor roll. But a star was put up beside Howard Lott's name last week. He was lost in the Mediterranean. On Sunday morning, John, we all go to church. Everyone you know is there, and they all ask for you. Church means more to us now than it ever did, for you are in our hearts and in our prayers. Take care of yourself, dear boy. Love from us all. Mother.
Before the war, most Americans followed established courting patterns. They met in school, began dating, went steady, became engaged, had a church wedding, and settled down. There were many exceptions, of course. but most American romances played out that way in life and in the movies until the war disturbed the nation's equilibrium. Young people were caught up in the drama and excitement of war, and the traditional rules of courtship and behavior were suspended.
I'd like a couple of dozen military marches, please.
Yes, sir. Johnny, what happened to you?
Nothing, I just changed clothes.
You've enlisted.
Well, you knew it was going to happen sooner or later.
Oh, you look wonderful in that uniform.
Not any better than the rest of the fellas. We all have the same tailor. Say, look, it's 9:30 now, and I got a report at 5:30 in the morning. That gives us 8 full hours to do the town, so let's go.
But, Johnny, I can't leave here. Dad isn't coming back tonight. I've got to keep this store open till 10.
Miss Dibble, this is war. We're closing the joint right now. My good darling.
Newly commissioned officers and their dates flocked to the big city nightclubs. Most of the young people were not used to this sort of sophistication. Uniforms and the evening gowns disguised the fact that Springfield, not Ciro's, was their natural habitat. No doubt, many errors of judgment were made in places like these. The expensive clubs did not cater to enlisted men. They had to look elsewhere for their fun. One Broadway musical comedy celebrated the romantic adventures of 3 sailors on shore leave in New York, and it featured a young, boy-crazy cabbie played by Nancy Walker.
I'm Lady Hack, see, and I'm on the town and on the make. Hey, come here. This guy's on a 24-hour pass, and he wants to see the sights of New York. But, I think he's kind of cute. So... Well, let's go up to my place.
Oh, I'd like to, lady, but...
Oh, come on. I'm young, free, and highly attainable.
Look, miss, for years, my dad's been telling me about all the wonderful sights there are to see in New York, and, well, now I'm here.
All right. I'll take you any place you want to go. Let's go to my place.
Let's go to Cleopatra's Needle.
Let's go to my place.
Let's see Wanamaker's store.
Let's go to my place.
Go to Lindy's, go to Luke
Go
Chow's.
to my place.
Let's see Radio City and Herald Square.
Let's go to my place.
Go to Rubens.
Go to my place.
Go to Macy's.
Go to my place.
The Roxy.
Go to my place.
Royster's,
My place.
Gimbel's,
My place.
Flatiron,
My place.
Building.
My place.
If I know.
My place. Wait a minute. I can cook. Well, this isn't in the show, but these gals are for you. Hello. Hello there, boys. Well, hello there. All right. That's enough of that. Hello.
Some aggressive females did pursue soldiers and sailors on leave. The girls, they were called. Americans who found it difficult to speak openly about sex now had some tough problems to face. Juvenile promiscuity, professional prostitution, and venereal disease.
What young fellow in uniform, away from home, doesn't like a chance to make new friends and to meet girls like his sister and people like his parents? Yes, they are homesick often, and they appreciate the clasp of a friendly hand.
Military films about VD were explicit, graphic, and frank. Not so the films aimed at civilians. Actors softened reality. It was shocking enough for Americans to hear the names of the diseases spoken out loud.
The rapid mobilization of uniformed men and defense workers places definite responsibilities upon every community. Especially, it is the community's job to guard them from those dangerous diseases, syphilis and gonorrhea, and to combat prostitution and promiscuity, spreaders of these infections. For wherever military, naval, or industrial manpower is mobilized, those who seek to exploit men and women for profit also mobilize unless action is taken against them. And chief among the exploiters are those who engage in the vicious prostitution racket. The most deadly and damaging part of this sordid business is organized with cold-blooded cunning and operated with one object only, to make money. Women and girls are sent out, according to carefully laid plans, to brothels, to low cafes and bars, and to the streets, where they spread venereal disease and disorder among those upon whom the defense of the nation depends. Some doormen and certain taxi drivers solicit customers and approach the boys in uniform wherever and whenever they can. Prostitutes and their exploiters, whether operating in gangs or independently, strike at the very foundation of the nation's strength, its vigorous and healthy youth.
If a young man managed to avoid getting VD, he could still fall for an allotment ante. These sexual racketeers would talk a serviceman into a quick marriage to get his $50 a month family allotment, and with luck, his $10,000 death benefit. Many allotment antes were bigamous. One specialized in aviators who had shorter life expectancies. Pin-up pictures. Did they raise military morale or lower moral standards? America could not decide. The drawings of artist Alberto Varga were judged obscene by the U.S. Post Office. That cost Esquire magazine its cheaper second-class mailing privileges. At the same time, the American government produced and distributed a film for servicemen that featured actress Carol Landis singing about pin-ups.
Hello. I suppose some of you are wondering what I'm doing here. Well, you see, some of you fellows have written to me and requested a real good pin-up picture of me in nothing but a bathing suit. So, here I am. Pin-up girl, that's what they name me. I'm the kid who loves you all. Don't be shy. Come on and frame me. Stick me in your locker or against the wall. Pin-up girl, you've all embraced me. I'm your dream, your gay mirage. Many eyes have sweetly faced me. I am yours for tacks or pins or mucilage. At night while you count sheep, I'm watching o'er your bed from above. And while you're fast asleep, baby, I know what you're dreaming of. Your pin-up girl. My clothes are daring. They're not much, I must confess. But I swear I'll go on wearing less and less for my pin-up dress. If it will bring you happiness, all my charms for you unfurl. I'm your little pin-up girl.
Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Frances Langford.
What does he look like, that boy of mine? Since the news came, I can't get him off my mind. Does he resemble his homely dad? Does he look like the girl that I left behind? Bring on the Germans and bring on the Japs. Bring on the first two you can find. One for the rascal I haven't seen, and one for the girl that I left behind.
In the movies, as in real life, young Americans found that it was difficult to reconcile established romantic tradition with wartime reality.
That must be a wonderful feeling for a soldier, to know there's somebody waiting for him.
Yeah.
Especially a wife.
Wife?
Sure, it's very simple. We stand in front of a minister, and he asks me the question, and I say, I do. Then he asks you the question, you say, I do. Or do you say, I do?
Look, honey, we've been going together since we were kids. We can wait for marriage a little while longer. Much as I love you, that's just not for us right now.
You mean we're not going to get married before you leave?
No, honey. And I know that's best. It was proven to me.
How is it proven?
Well...
That's what I thought.
Oh, look, that would be the romantic thing to do. Fellas all over the country, all over the world marrying just as they get into uniform. I don't have the right.
I've offered you the right. Well, I guess I better get home. Thanks for letting me know how you feel about things. Please don't follow me, Johnny. I'm liable to say something I'll be sorry for the rest of my life.
American movies often presented marriage as the ideal solution to life's problems, and many Americans believe that to be true. But these were anxious, uncertain times for young people. If they did marry, they would not be able to take their traditional place in American society and become that nice young couple down the block. Not till the war was over.
I can't give you anything but love, baby. That's the only thing I've plenty of, baby. Dream a while, scheme a while, we're sure to find happiness, and I guess all those things you've always pined for.
The American dream seemed suspended, for the duration at least, but 20 million people went searching for it anyway. 15% of the American people left their hometowns to look for jobs. What they found in the wartime boom towns were problems created by their own large numbers. The communities the war workers invaded tried to care for their children, but there were not enough teachers or classrooms. Children had to go to school in shifts. Some did not go at all. For the younger children, there were never enough nursery schools or daycare centers. Families searching for jobs found themselves camping out in trailers or tents or shanties on the outskirts of the boom towns. This was not Springfield of the American dream. Here, there was no established social order, no comfortable small-town routine, no community supervision of the children. In the boom towns, what the neighbors thought wasn't very important. There were plenty of jobs, but the communities where the new war plants and shipyards were built were overwhelmed by the crush of new people. The boom towns were hard-pressed to provide even the most basic municipal services. Life was hard for many war workers and their families, but it was better than life had been during the Depression years. With too little supervision at home, too many children got into trouble with the law. A wave of juvenile crime and sometimes violence swept across the country. Juvenile delinquency, which was bad enough, was only a symptom of a major change in American society. But few Americans saw that at the time, not even J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the FBI.
Of course, Mr. Hoover, I realize that the FBI is a federal agency, while the problem of juvenile delinquency is necessarily a matter of local law enforcement. But our young people are getting out of hand everywhere.
Well, I know, Mrs. Robinson, and every report I get from the field tells me how enormous the problem is. And we're doing all we can by working with the local agencies. But no amount of law enforcement can solve a problem which goes straight back to the home. The solution isn't in arresting these youngsters. It's up to the parents to give them a home life which will remove the temptation to delinquency.
Mopping up soda pop Rickies to our heart's delight. Dancing to the swing-a-roo quickies, jukebox Saturday night.
Before the war in America, there were children and there were adults. The adults were the ones in charge. The war spawned a third group, teenagers. Children in their adolescent years began to live by their own rules, and nobody stopped them. In time, American culture would be saturated by this new teenage tribe.
Money, we really don't need it. We'll make out all right. Let me out the guy feed the jukebox Saturday night.
If teenagers were establishing their own codes of conduct, so were their older brothers and sisters. The traditional moral standards of young Americans were being challenged by the war and by the country's songwriters. The lyrics were euphemistic enough to get past the radio network censors, but the message was clear: sex was patriotic.
And here's a bit of advice for all the girls from lovely Nancy Norman.
You can't say no to a soldier, a sailor, or a handsome Marine. No, you can't say no if he wants to dance. If he's gonna fight, he's got a right to romance. So get out your lipstick and powder. Be beautiful and dutiful too. If he's not your type, then it's still okay. You can always kiss him in a sisterly way. Oh, you can't say no. No, you gotta give in if you want him to win for you.
There she is. Oh, thanks. Eileen, is anything wrong?
Johnny, this is Chaplain Burke.
Congratulations, Corporal.
What'd I do?
Corporal Jones, I've decided that you don't know what the war is all about. We're free people fighting for the right to remain free, to work and to be married and to raise a family in a fine, decent country.
Eileen, honey, I know that.
Then why do you act like we've lost the war? Open your heart, Johnny. We're all in this fight together, women as well as men. Let's share our responsibilities. I want to be a part of you, Johnny. A part that goes with you on the battlefield, someone to come back to.
Forgive me, honey.
You ought to be ashamed. I even had to buy the ring.
To have and to hold from this day forward.
So the soldier and the girl got married. Once again, marriage was presented as a solution. According to Hollywood, getting married was a patriotic thing to do. In real life, many young Americans did talk themselves into marriage, just like the actors in the wartime movies. Unfortunately, in real life, not all the endings were happy.
Till death do us part.
To love and to cherish until death do us part.
Marry in haste and repent at leisure. It was inevitable that matrimonial mistakes would be made during wartime. Many couples, as in the past, stayed together and made the best of it, but many Americans did not. They divorced in large numbers in spite of social, religious, and family disapproval. Obviously, traditional American family values were under attack. The high post-war divorce rate was one of the first signs of changes rumbling beneath the surface of American life. They would erupt in full force in the 1960s.